Shabbat shalom. So I've never been a runner. Actually, that is a huge understatement. I have always proactively known in my deepest soul that I cannot run, that it wasn't possible for me. The last time I tried was in college. I wanted to join the ultimate Frisbee team. I was so psyched. And then the coach began by telling us all to run clear around the campus. Everyone took off. I lasted less than 90 seconds before I walked back to my dorm room completely out of breath. I wasn't even that upset because it just confirmed what I already knew. I can't run. But for all kinds of reasons, it's become clear to me that I need to make some changes, which is all the lead up that you need to know for me to tell you that 2 months ago, I finally decided that the next morning I was going to wake up and go running. I had no gear, I had no experience, I had no stamina, as I'd soon be reminded. There's a program, though, for non or new runners called Couch to 5K, yes, that guides you day by day. Seeing as I do well with structure, that was my plan. Now I want to pause for just a second. I know we do have some amazing runners in this very chapel. And I also know that we have folks here whose bodies cannot make the decision that I made. So I just want to say out loud that there is no moral judgment about what any of us can and cannot choose to do. And we all work very differently in all of our sacred bodies, and that is enough. While for me, this story is about running, it's not really about running, per se. You knew that. That said, I did run that day, and it was not pretty. It was grunty and gaspy, but I did it. And then I did it every other day for 6 weeks. And some days were awful, painful, quite embarrassing in public, really. And some days were triumphant, even shocking to me. I had setbacks, including 2 weeks in which I did not run at all. And then this past Sunday, a return to the park to begin to build back all the ground that I had lost in those dormant weeks. It has not become easy. But 2 months ago, I was 100% positive that I could not run. It was just the hand that I had been dealt. But it turned out that my narrative was false. Powerful, but false. The pull to believe that I was not capable was so strong, though, that it had felt like an unquestionable truth. This week, we read a story in Parshat Shalach Lecha about the 12 Israelite spies that are sent ahead of our caravan in the wilderness to check out the land. At this point in our story, all we knew was that we had left Mitzrayim, received the Torah at Sinai, and we're now maybe a few weeks away from our destination of the Promised Land. So Moses asks the spies to go out and bring back news. Is it a good and fertile land? How is its fruit? Who are its people? And what would it take to enter the land when we arrived? 12 spies went out and came back. When they returned from scouting the land, the 12 of them stood before the hundreds of thousands of people waiting to hear what they saw. 10 of the spies reported that while the land was absolutely good and fertile, the people living there were enormous and scary, and no way could they enter that land. No way, not possible. Even with God's promise that they would make it there, they knew in their deepest soul that they were incapable. It was a fact. 2 spies disagreed. Caleb interrupted their report and declared, Yachol nuchal. Surely we can. The repetitive word they use comes from the verb to be able. Saying the word twice in a different way, Yachol nuchal, is grammatically emphatic in nature. Of course we can. Yes, it is possible. We are surely capable of this. The 10 interrupted him and shout him down with the same word, confirming their own immutable narrative. Lo nuchal, we cannot. They are sure. we understand why. They're afraid of this wild, unknown, and clearly difficult and dangerous task ahead. I imagine that Caleb and Joshua must have also felt that fear. The task would be difficult and dangerous. And these are two ways of living in this world, with a Yachol Nuchal lens, a lens of possibility, and a Lo Nuchal lens, a lens where we concede impossibility. And it matters a great deal which of these we adopt, which we decide to believe, for it will shape what happens next. We're in a wilderness like this one too. The tasks ahead do sometimes seem insurmountable, unimaginable, lo nuchal, impossible. And it can feel like all is lost. Maybe you're thinking about the great task ahead to protect our democracy, or the closing window of time we have to stop climate change, or the growing refugee crisis, or increasing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, and white supremacy, or the war between Israel and Gaza. These challenges and journeys before us that loom so large, a mountain before us. And at the most difficult moments, we might also teeter on the edge of Lo Nuchal, a narrative that concedes impossibility as if it were fact. Caleb and Joshua begged the people to see possibility, but the pull of despair of Lo Nuchal was just so strong. And so the 10 Lo Nuchal spies won the day. Caleb and Joshua could not get them to see that their narrative of limitation and hopelessness was a false one. And so the multitudes weep with sadness and with anger. And God tells them that they will never enter the land. They will wander for 40 years instead. Like I was sure I could not run, and therefore I did not run. They said, Lo Nuchal, we cannot make it to the land, and therefore they didn't. When we walk the world, scout the land, assess the situation as a sure incapability, we set a certain reality into motion. And it's so heavy, a despair that pulls us down, a concession that we simply cannot have the dream that we might dream. But what happens if we allow on this night for Caleb to whisper in our ears? What happens to our hearts, to our souls, to our truths, to our lives, if we were to look at the greatest challenges before us right now, and they are great, and take the deepest of breaths and say, Yachol Nuchal, come at me with what you will. Of course we are able. Of course this is possible. Whatever the this is for you tonight, what breadth of possibility might be open before us if we refuse the false narrative of Lo Nuchal? And I don't mean to be Pollyannish about this, that just because something is possible means that it's easy, or that it's possible today, or even tomorrow, or the next day, or even soon. I'm running now, but the metaphors for how hard the challenges are all too available. There's a hill I didn't know was there, or my knees just can't take it, or it's so humid I can barely breathe, or a twinge in my hip so I have to stop. That was fun. Or so I didn't want to wake up that early, or I have a real setback, or it turns out the next day I can't go nearly as far as I did even the day before, and it is beyond hard. That is the wilderness that they were in. That is the wilderness that we are in. Some days will be ugly and painful, and we will have losses and setbacks. But some days will be triumphant and even shocking. 40-some years of knowing I couldn't run. 40 years of knowing they'd never enter the land. What self-fulfilling prophecy might we avoid today? Our tradition is right here, whisper yelling in our ears. Caleb wants us to hear him so much and not perpetuate the narrative of the 10 spies. So let's try this. I invite you to think of the thing that is weighing on you the most right now. The thing that you are most sure we cannot change, that we will surely lose or have already lost. And say to yourself, Yachol Nuchal, surely this is possible. You can say it with some sass. I find that helps. Now turn to a person near you and say to them, Yachol nuchal, surely we can do this. And it's okay to feel a little bit silly. It's okay to look a little bit silly trying to carve out a hopeful place in this world. So turn to someone near you and say, Yachol nuchal.
Yachol nuchal.
Surely we can do this. And whatever you just meant, whatever you were talking about, begin to believe that. It is our narrative now. We will not wander lost for 40 years believing the falseness that we are bound to fail. That is not our legacy or the teaching of Shalach Lecha, not tonight. May we honor the painful lessons of our ancestors, the hopeful fire in Caleb and Joshua's bellies, the capacity that we have to press on when it's hard, to challenge any narrative which would try to convince us that all is lost so that we might as not even try. May we take on together whatever may be ahead, for surely we are able. Amen. Shabbat shalom.